Hey guys, so last week Fujifilm had a networking event in New York City. It was in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg to be specific, and it was mainly a networking event, but they also said that they would have some equipment to test out. So I went to check it out and I saw that they had the X-H2 and X-H2S. Immediately I grabbed the X-H2, hit the streets. I only had about 20 minutes to kind of walk around, take some pictures. So this is a very brief, fire drill moment where luckily I brought an SD card with me, but I basically just kind of tried to take a handful of photos, a variety type of photos, and also test out the autofocus and whatnot. So take that for what it is. This is just really like a bunch of pixel peeping, first initial look and feel about this camera. It's not really a review or anything. And also keep in mind, I only had one lens, which was the 56 1.2. So that's where we're at. We're gonna pixel peep a bunch. We're gonna talk about initial feel and ergonomics and all that. I'm not gonna really get into the specs. That's not what this video is about. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. It would help me out a bunch. And that being said, let's get into the video. So just to briefly touch upon the specs / ergonomics of this camera, this is a 42 megapixel camera. It has the new X Processor 5 in this camera, boasts 40 megapixels. And this camera is 16-bit, which I'm excited to check out. The GFX 100S is 16-bit and 100 megapixels. And the IQ is just out of this world amazing. So definitely interested to see how this camera not stacks up to the GFX, but how 40 megapixels treats it. Before the GFX, I primarily shot on the X-H2 as my main camera, and that is of course only 23 megapixels. And I'm really curious to see how 40 megapixels plays out in real life in like street photography scenario. In terms of initial feel and perception of this camera, if you come from the X-H2, you will know what to expect. So it has a grip, pretty pronounced grip, and this grip is kind of like it's definitely a 2.0. It feels really great, really comfortable. It's improved. It feels a bit more, it almost feels a bit longer, but it feels like a sturdier grip, the way that they redesigned this grip. So that to me, first impression picking it up, I really liked it. I actually didn't have a strap on this camera, which is a little bit nerve-wracking, especially walking around with a camera that's not my own. But yeah, I felt very comfortable walking around with this camera. Ergonomics, from what you can expect if you come from X-H2 are going to be even better. So much to my dismay on this X-H2, they did take away the dials. I dealt with it on the GFX. I didn't mind it. It was a sacrifice I was willing to make, but it kind of hurt when they took it away on the X-H2. They do have, obviously they have the front and the back wheels, which you can, you're holding onto the grip. They're easy access. They're kind of hard to turn. I didn't have this long term, so I didn't really form a true opinion on that, but they were a little bit different. I didn't get to reprogram anything. So I would say the controls I found a bit confusing on this camera for sure. There's an ISO button on the top, which if you press it and then you turn the wheel, nothing changes. I tried holding it and turning the wheel, nothing changes. This is all like initial stuff you figure out when you pick up the camera. I'm just saying from my perspective, and I did actually reset the settings immediately once I got it. It just was a bit confusing. I couldn't figure out how to adjust the ISO. I really kind of had to just play around with it until I figured it out, and I just kept it on low. Or on the lowest level before low. But yeah, so the grip, phenomenal, but the controls, a little bit confusing. I'm a little disappointed they got rid of the dials on the top. That's not a big deal. Those things I would figure out if I had more time with the camera. Literally, if I had more time than 20 minutes. I don't want to spend 10 minutes figuring out the controls and lose all that time. But the real thing that was a pain to use was the screen. Again, I don't know if this is something that, in time you get used to it. It's not a big deal. But the screen I found to be it's not really very photography friendly in my opinion. On the X-H2, I can't show you because actually I can show you the GFX. Same thing as the X-H2. You got this flippy screen, and if you're taking a picture down low, you can just basically hold the camera like this, take your shot. Or if it's above, same thing, hold it, take a shot. Or if you're doing, you know how the screen works. If you're watching this video, you probably have an idea. But with the flippy screen, the screen literally flips out like this, and you can then tilt it up and down. So to me, it's kind of like if you're going down low for a shot, if you're going down low, I can't actually get low. If you're going down low for a shot, you're looking at the screen, which is offset from the camera. I find that a bit confusing. I'm not sure if it's something that you get used to when using these flippy cameras. I know Sony just released the A7RV, and they have both. They have a screen that flips completely out to the side, but also does exactly what the X-H2 GFX 100S XT line does. So again, take it for what it is. I only use it for a little bit of time, but I did find it a bit of a pain to use. Other than that though, I love the X-H series for the grip. It's very comfortable to use, so I felt at home with that. So another small change they did, the lever on the front left that lets you select the type of shooting you're gonna do, whether you're single or continuous or manual shooting, it changed from a lever to a button. So instead of just basically turning it and selecting your mode of shooting, now it's a button. So you have to basically press it in and press it multiple times to cycle through whichever type of shooting you'd like. Not a deal breaker by any means, just different. Probably the lever would be quicker, but it was an interesting upgrade for sure. I'm not gonna go through all the specs with you. I'm just kind of talking about the things I noticed on my first reaction to this camera. Lastly, let's talk about the memory cards. So you got two slots. The first is Express slot B. The second is an SD card. I don't believe the first slot is a combo slot. I believe it's just Express. Express will come in handy. It's much faster than an SD card. However, I don't think the speed is a major deal breaker. Like the GFX only has 2 SD card slots. It's plenty fast. I never really ran into any issues, but I'm not doing heavy video on the GFX. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which camera is stronger in video, but Express card B, I mean, maybe it will make a big difference. I'm not sure. I think the thing for me is not whether or not it's Express card B versus SD. I think it's just pick a slot and have 2 of the same, because ultimately now you need to have an Express card B for slot 1. When that fills up, do you have another Express card that you pop in, or do you just write into the SD card in slot B? I think it's kind of confusing. I don't really think it's the best user experience. I think, pick a slot, have 2 SD cards, or have 2 Express Bs, or even better, have Express combo slots. That would probably be the biggest win for everyone. Not sure why they did it the way they did. Oh, also one last thing, the battery is upgraded. Not that I had to change it or anything, but I think it's an important point to bring up. So it's the upgraded battery that all the cameras have, X-T4, maybe the rumored X-T5 will have it. The GFX, so you're pretty much set. If you have both X series and GFX, you can't go wrong, because you basically just buy a bunch of the batteries, you get a multi-battery charger, and you're pretty much set to go. So jumping into this, just as a reminder, all these files are shot with 56mm 1.2, the Mark II version, the weather-resistant version. That's how you can differentiate it pretty quickly. All of these are unedited, so we're just gonna either maybe perhaps bump the exposure a little bit here and there. But first, before we even start to zoom, let's just take a second to acknowledge how beautiful the bokeh is on this lens. I mean, this is buttery smooth. I've always heard great things about the 56, but this is really nice. So if we just jump on in to about 100%. So this is shot at 1/60th of a second. I would have expected it to be in focus, but it looks like it may just be a blade of focus. Or yeah, it looks like it's not soft. It's just a very, very, very narrow blade of focus, as it is a f1.2. So taking a look here, a little noisy, but again, I only had this for 20 minutes and it was pretty much as the sun was going down. So it's kind of hard to really judge from a noise perspective, but just from a lens perspective, this is really nice. But looking at 100% here, obviously this jumps you in substantially further than the X-H2. Let's move on forward. So I love taking shots like this. If you see my other videos, you know that. We zoom in here, again at 100%. This looks maybe a smidge soft, but again, 2 photos in a row, we just have, when you shoot wide open at 1.2, you just have a very narrow blade of focus, which is really nice. I think this is a super abstract photo. It's not necessary. I think this would be better served maybe at a little bit different of an angle, or just maybe push this a bit further down. Yeah, I think that either way, if we're just looking at bokeh, super nice. I don't want to make this about the lens, it's more about the camera. But yeah, this level of zoom on an X series lens camera is pretty interesting. Let's keep on moving. So here I roughly started to edit it, just auto settings, whatever. We zoom in here again at 100%. I bumped it up to 320. This level of zoom is just, it's kind of blowing my mind. On a X-H series camera, pretty cool. So this, obviously the focus point here, the whole tree and some of this gate, and it looks like I'm not sure, it's a little soft. Maybe I didn't lock focus, I'm not sure. Maybe I'm zooming in a little too far, but this gate looks pretty sharp. I need to undo that. Back to 100. Yeah, the gate looks pretty sharp, so maybe the tree is just, the line of focus, the plane of focus was just a little in front of the tree, so the tree looks a little soft. Either way, again, pretty grainy, but it's really hard to tell. This is the original, so I wouldn't expect this much grain, but I'm not sure. We'll have to make a bit of a conclusion as we get a bit further on down the video. So just total background obliteration. In a shot like this, so this is a 56 millimeter. I'm not going to break out the calculator right now, but I believe it's around 85 millimeter equivalent. I have been shooting with the GFX, the 110. So my kind of new favorite focal range is the 85-ish area. So I know that if I shot this with the 110, you would have a much more extreme bokeh, much more background blur, also making it pretty abstract. But let's just zoom in, jump into 100. So again, like just after I've been editing GFX photos for the last bit over a year, so, and of course some X series here and there, but this is still pretty crazy to see the level of zoom that you get. We're basically at double from what we were before, not a little under double, but really refreshing on an X series to do this. And obviously the whole post is in focus. Keep moving. So let's just zoom into the corner. Again, I don't want to start talking about too much about I guess it'll be really like a lens and camera first reaction type video, but tree looks sharp here. These look a little, the leaves are definitely behind the tree, so it's a little soft there, but again, a pretty thin plane of focus. Move on. So in terms of dynamic range, this is the original. I know if I had a GFX, all these windows would be pretty, I would be able to recover this information, especially shot at this dynamic range level. So, but it is X series. If I just bring the exposure down, obviously we got a pretty blown out highlights there. But looking past that, the bricks are pretty sharp. They do fall off nicely, as we would expect. But I think that this is a pretty nice result. I think if I did actually edit this photo, it would be really nice. So here I wanted to really see, I really wanted to push the level of detail that we could get with this camera, with a shot like this. So if I zoom in here, obviously my point of focus was a bit towards the top of the tree. So we do have that point of that focus. So if I bring down this highlights, pretty impressive here. Again, we're at 100%. If we zoom in, 200% is Clearly that is the limits of this camera. I'm sure in the right studio environment, you could probably go past 200. If you know, studio environment, proper lighting, on a tripod. But still, this is pretty impressive. I'm really liking the 40 megapixels that this camera pushes. And yeah. This shot, I found a puddle. So first thing you do, puddle photography. Now this shot's pretty sharp. At 200%, it's definitely pretty crisp. Probably not usable, but again, not bad. Zoom out 100. Decent detail in the tire, the headlights. I mean, all this plane right here is very, very sharp. Can't go wrong with that. The fall off is pretty nice. Nice little bokeh balls back here. The puddle is not super sharp, but pretty nice result, I think. Yeah, let's keep moving. So here I retook it. Again, we are at 100%. So looks like we have a bit of diffraction, not diffraction, chromatic aberrations here. It is, again, a shot 1.2. So we have some teal and magenta here. But we zoom out here, I think a 66, if for whatever reason you want to crop like this, totally acceptable. And again, to crop like this on a X series camera is pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. Thought this would be a good shot to pixel peep a bit. We have a lot of texture going on here. So this was shot at 320th of a second. It should be pretty sharp. We shouldn't have too much motion in the trees. So can't really judge. I mean, if we talk about corner distortion and whatnot, that's more on the lens, but as you can see here, pretty sharp in the corners and obviously sharp in the center. That was my point. This is not too sharp, but it may have slightly moved. Nice fall off on the bricks in the center. Again, just testing quality here. Looks like the, I'm not sure if I was 100% straight on here. Again, this is a pretty rushed little experiment, but yeah, overall not too bad. The sharpest point in the photo is definitely up here, and I know for a fact that's where I had the focus, and it was not straight in front of me. So overall, not too bad. Let's just check dynamic range. Obviously, nothing was super overexposed here, but if we zoom in, yeah, to zoom in at 100% on this window to get the detail in the curtains and the blinds and all that, pretty impressive for the X series, the X-H series. Not bad. Oh, before actually, let's just check this. How's the grain on this? This is a very well lit photo. Not bad. Looks about normal. Not bad at all. So grain is always to be expected in darker photos, but yeah, this was of course another really bright photo. Auto settings did not, they failed me there. You get a decent amount of sky recovery. That's not bad. Bringing it down a little bit, bring the shadows up, make it super flat just for preview purposes. Yeah, pretty good. This is really refreshing to do this on an X series, to be able to crop. But also that's how you get pretty good at composition, by not being able to crop, not using cropping as a crutch. You also kind of potentially lose lens characteristics when you crop, but that's kind of another conversation. Not bad. No, the grain does not look too bad. Pretty neat. Different scenario. Okay, this was, I want to say I potentially bursted this, but I'm not 100% sure. Grain here, pretty heavy. Again, I kept the ISO at 100. I'll talk more about ergonomics and stuff like that towards the end. I found it super confusing to use at first. It was not like a pick up and use camera. The GFX 100S, totally like that. X-H2, totally like that. X-H2, also like that. But this camera is kind of annoying. Get more into that later. This person is in focus. Pretty sharp. The dog, I think the little soft. It looks like the gate, pretty crisp. You have some chromatic aberrations here. Magenta here, teal here. A little disappointing for that lens, but again, it's a 1.2. I know the original 23 1.4 had its fair share of it. Even the 80mm on the GFX does that a lot. For a shot like this, definitely an acceptable shot. I think you have a nice blur on the foreground. If I were to actually, edit this shot, I would probably, bring it in a little bit. And, now you have the power on the X series, you make it a nice resolution for Instagram 4.5. Boom, not bad. I definitely like this croppability on this for sure. And again, you could even zoom in, you still have even more. You could probably crop in to here and it'd be, not bad. Again, the grain is definitely apparent here, but it did start to get pretty dark quickly. Okay, I just started taking some random photos just to really judge it. So these aren't fully, not edited. I meant to hit this as the focus point, but clearly the back of the building is the focus point, but very sharp in this corner, minimal distortion. And then of course, pretty neat that you get, this whole side of the building is obviously all one plane. It's sharp, but nicely rendered. You have a blade of focus right here, and then it drops off. I took a close-up of this. So let's just do an auto here. Very sharp here. Let me zoom in more. Yep, very sharp. Impressive. We're at 100%. Let's just zoom in a little bit more. I think 200 is really it's a bit too far. Unfortunately, it won't let me go in between all that. But I think that if it was like 150, that would be usable percentage-wise. But this is definitely a nice result. Pretty neat shot. Here, zoomed in at 100%. You can definitely feel the texture on the brick. I think windowsill or parts of the window, very sharp as well. And of course it drops off a bit, but pretty extreme angle, extreme shot. So overall pretty nice. Let's see if we can recover some sky. Nope, not really, but it might've just been completely white. This was a shot I was pretty excited to take a look at. So found some flowers on the street and zooming in at 100. I mean, this is very sharp. I'm not sure. I think it is pushing it a little bit. 67.7% or 66.7% is pretty nice, but the focus here was on the stem and not the flowers, so it's not a super beautiful shot. But this was a bokeh test. I mean, this background is amazing. Did a great job of blurring it all out. Moving on to the next shot, I just shot a couple here. Same sort of thing. I think when you want to shoot something like this, you need to manual focus it and peak highlight it so that you can really see. But this stem's pretty sharp here. You can see the little little hairs on the stem, the vine, whatever it is. That's pretty impressive. Again, this background is really nice. Definitely super nice. If you have an X series, you definitely want to buy this lens. Very nice. Here, again, just a quick test. I didn't manually focus this, so not expecting amazing. It looks like it's a little soft. Maybe these move slightly. but at 100%, definitely a little grainy. I mean, it wasn't super dark, but you know, it was not daytime. It was definitely getting dark. So I'm not gonna hardcore fault this for being grainy, but this camera does seem to be kind of grainy compared to original X-H2. So at 100%, different shot. This is super sharp. Even at 200%, not bad, not usable. 200 is definitely a bit, for street stuff, too deep, but overall, pretty nice result. Let's keep moving. Street shot. So here, again, just a kind of like a narrow blade of focus and nice drop off. Really nice blur, nice bokeh. I found some Christmas lights or holiday lights, whatever kind of lights these are that set the mood. So zoomed in at 100%, this is super sharp here. Very grainy, but a little dark out. These bokeh balls are super nice. I have another one. Yeah, I got the, let me zoom into 100. I got this one. This one had the actual bulb in focus, so that was nice. I think it's a bit grainy. Let's see. Let's just try to bring it down a little bit quick. I'm not a master of bringing down the noise, but yeah, that's a bit nicer, I think. But overall, still, I kind of can't get over how much we can zoom in on this. Definitely really nice. Really nice how the fall off, so very pleasing. Like this is, if this was like an f4 lens, this would be very much kind of an eyesore because these would be competing, but this is very, it's a nice lens. Okay, text shot. So specifically took this. I may not have been, I probably was not straight on with this. Again, this was a rushed environment, so I was not taking my time. This looks really sharp. If we zoom into 100, not a little bit too, 200 is too much, but 100 is not bad. Looks like there's, for whatever reason, it was not straight on, but this is pretty out of focus. This is the part that's in focus, and if we keep going up again, the same thing happens, which is kind of odd, but again, it probably wasn't straight on. And again, you have point of focus right here, right here, and then pretty big blade. So this is kind of like the focus area, and then and fall off for the rest. Not bad. No grain, so that's nice. Nice, very nice blurred out background. Again, another signed picture. So definitely have some great texture here. Very sharp, but this is a bit of an extreme angle, so we don't really have too much in focus. So this is in focus. We have the New York City. This is kind of in focus, a little soft. Then the rest is completely out of focus. Zooming in here, we just have a pretty narrow blade of focus, so must be something like this. Follow the line, but perhaps, or maybe like this. But really nice, nice effect, nice, oh, this is super sharp here, minimal distortion. So up here, I wanted to get more of the sign in focus, so let me just edit this real quick. Trying to just make it a little flat so we could judge the highlights. Yeah, get a decent amount of texture on this sign. Very sharp, definitely using all those 40 megapixel power. And another shot just to show off the bokeh of the lens. Super nice, very, very crisp at 100%. I'm not gonna go further. I think we all know what would happen at this point, but very sharp. The background is just really impressive here, but this shot's super grainy. The original shot is basically in the shadows, so I can't really complain about the grain here. Matter of fact, I think it handles the grain exceptionally well here. Different variation of it. Just bring this up a little bit. Yeah, pretty grainy, but again, this is the original, so not bad at all. Let's take a look at the bokeh. Really nice. Very, very nice. Took a picture of this bike wheel. So I think we got, I don't know what the focus point was. Maybe I missed focus here. I took this picture kind of quick. Maybe part of this ring is in focus. I think note to anyone who wants to pick up this lens, you have a very, very, very narrow blade of focus. So unless you want that narrow look, you may want to shoot at 1.4 or something along those lines. Took a picture of this guy that I don't know. We are at 66.7. So it looks like yeah, he's in focus. This shirt is decently sharp. Arm's pretty good. Hat definitely looks pretty good. This is the original. Not bad. I took also, there was a light right above him. I just wanted to see the dynamic range here, but if we bring the exposure down, as expected, completely blown out, but honestly not bad. Like the surrounding areas are handled pretty well, I think. Even a decent amount. I would say the X-H2, the original, would be blown out a bit more, so I think that's pretty good. This, I was pretty excited to shoot this, so if we zoom in here, obviously I shot this at 1.2. Everything to this point is 1.2. I think that's what you got to do when you test out this lens. Definitely have some pretty severe chromatic aberrations. You have the magenta teal here, but pretty sharp. The blade focus goes like this. And then go to the next shot. I shot this at f2. Bit more grain. Let's just see. Oh, this is unedited. I didn't edit this at all. Yeah, so obviously this is a lot darker. I didn't adjust the shutter. Shot both at 60. Not bad. I think when you're shooting something like this, you want to stack it, focus stack it, but definitely get a bit more of the logo if we just compare these two real quick. You just gotta admit though, the 1.2 is just very, very pleasing to look at. So if we are at, I'm not sure what percentage we're at, but yeah, the 1.2 is just really, really nice. But in terms of sharpness and whatnot of the lens, this is the 2.0 shot. I mean, this grill is super sharp. We're at 32%. We're not that zoomed in, but very sharp here. Very sharp. Good level, like, you know, minimal, no distortion on the corners. Can't really tell if it's too sharp or not, or how sharp it is in the corners, because that's such an extreme angle. Okay, I shot this building. Let's just auto see if we can recover any sky. Again, the sky was it's kind of overcast, or it got a bit overcast. So if we're at 100% now we're at 200. So 200 is definitely a bit too far, like we've been talking about. Zoom out a bit. Not bad. This is just a random shot. Point of focus is here. Again, pretty impressive you could zoom in this far. I'm not sure the percentage of the photo that this is, but it's definitely pretty small percent, so that's impressive. Just a close-up of a flower on the street. This was kind of, I'm not sure the level of focus this was. I mean, it's definitely sharp at some points. I didn't have it on manual focus, so I nailed the focus on an odd part, but I think it's definitely a bit grainy, but it was progressively getting darker. And I think that, you know, for the time of day, it's not bad, but pretty grainy. We could probably reduce that a bit. This was inside at the bar. If we click to zoom, this was shot at 1/60th of a second. The original looked like this. So these nan lights really, really lit it up very well. If I reduce this, yeah, completely blown out here. These pedals are completely blown out. They obviously were right next to the light. I'm not sure how much better the GFX would be. I know you'd have more, but how much more? That's the question. But, you know, pretty nice. The low light was handled pretty well. This is the original. Probably just auto settings. And here, I want to assume the light color changed. Oh, it definitely did, because this was purple, this was blue, and we have more. It must have been during a transition. We have more information on the flowers because the light was not as bright, but not bad. I like the foreground blur is very nice paired with the back. This lens is obviously a great lens for really popping the subject. And one last one. Focus points here, pretty sharp. And then on the mason jar too. Yeah, this jar is really sharp. Let's just bring this out a little bit, see the blur, the grain. Obviously very, very, very grainy, but for shooting inside, it's really not that bad. You really can't, like if you want to shoot inside, you want to shoot at night and not do long exposure, you really can't beat a 1.2 lens at all by any means. So I'm not going to ramble on too much more in this outro, but just to give you my final thoughts on this camera, I think it's really solid. Personally, I upgraded to the GFX 100S, but if I did not, I would absolutely be picking up this camera. 40 megapixels is super refreshing. 23 was just not enough for me. Upgrading to the X-T4 was simply not an option. 26 versus 23, negligible. But 40, pretty solid, as you saw from all the pixel peeping we did. Autofocus is definitely pretty snappy, not as snappy as the X-H2S. This camera has the megapixels, the 2S has the speed of autofocus. So personally, I don't think you could go wrong with this camera. I want to give it another shot. I want to get my hands on this camera, and I would definitely be interested to check out the video aspect of it. How does it stack up to the X-H2S in terms of a situation like this, where I'm just talking to the camera and rambling on about specs and lenses and cameras and all that. So I don't know. I'm going to try to get my hands on it, see if I can make a video on it and give you guys a review. I think the 40 megapixels aspect of this camera is something that makes you move past the flippy screen if personally you don't like it. I didn't have a great time with it, but maybe in time it would be all right. So that being said, I'm going to wrap up this video. If you are a first-time viewer, please consider subscribing to this channel. I'm going to have some more X series content sprinkled in here and there. Primarily my content is going to be GFX, but you know, may have some Sony stuff coming up in the future. Definitely going to have some more X series stuff. So give me a subscribe if you have not already. It would help me out a ton, help me grow this channel. And with that being said, I'll catch you in that next video.